You ever notice how your car doesn't really seem to shift gears? It just kind of goes. The acceleration is just one smooth, continuous line. Well, you might be driving a car with a CVT transmission. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on how they work, what the critical warning signs of failure are, and most importantly, how you can avoid a repair bill that is just catastrophically expensive. Okay, let's get into it.
So what's the connection? How does that seamless feeling you get when you put your foot down connect to a super complex steel belt made of hundreds of tiny parts? The answer, my friends, lies inside one of the most misunderstood pieces of automotive tech out there, the CVT.
All right, first things first. Let's just demystify what in the world is going on under the hood. From the driver's seat, it might feel like any other automatic, but the way a CVT actually gets power to the wheels, it's a whole different ballgame, and that's where things get really fascinating. That right there is the magic phrase, a continuous range. See, a normal automatic has a set number of gears, 4, 6, maybe 10 if it's fancy. It kind of clunks between them. But a CVT? It has a virtually infinite number of gear ratios to choose from. This lets it keep the engine right in its sweet spot, its most efficient RPM range. And what do you get? Better gas mileage and that super smooth ride. Now let's look at how this magic trick actually works. The concept is surprisingly simple. You've got two pulleys, a primary one hooked up to the engine, and a secondary one that sends power to the wheels. As you drive, the sides of these pulleys can move closer together or farther apart, which changes their diameter. It's kind of like the gears on a 10-speed bike. As one pulley gets wider, the other gets narrower, and that steel belt connecting them is constantly adjusting the ratio. It's always hunting for that perfect point of efficiency. But, and there's always a but, right? This brilliant system is not invincible. The good news, though, is that a CVT will almost always give you some warning signs before it completely gives up the ghost. You just have to know what you're listening for and what you're feeling for. And that is the absolute key. A little issue can turn into a massive one fast. Ignoring those little whispers from your transmission can lead to some very loud, and I mean very expensive shouts down the road.
So what should you be on the lookout for? Well, some are things you'll feel, like a hesitation when you press the gas, or a weird vibration and shuddering, especially when you're driving slowly. Other signs are things you'll hear, like new whining or grinding sounds that definitely weren't there last week. Maybe you notice your engine is revving really high, but the car isn't really speeding up to match. And hey, don't ignore your nose. A burnt smell after a drive is a huge red flag. Even something as simple as a sudden drop in your fuel economy, that's your car trying to tell you something is wrong.
So, how does a simple symptom like that snowball into a complete failure? Let's go deep inside the transmission to find the real root of the problem. Right, so when you feel that shudder or hear that whine, what is physically going on in there? The vast majority of the time, it all comes down to one single critical component, that steel belt. Now, this is not your grandpa's rubber fan belt. Oh no, this thing is an absolute engineering marvel. It's called a push belt, and it's made of hundreds of individual steel pieces they call elements. And all those little elements are held in place by these thin, flexible steel bands or rings that run along the sides. And just to put the complexity into perspective for you, a single one of these belts can have 399 of those little elements and 24 of those steel rings holding it all together. That's 423 individual pieces, all working in perfect harmony until they're not.
And here it is. This is the Achilles heel. All it takes is for one of those tiny paper-thin steel rings to crack under stress. So what causes that stress? Well, it's usually things like too much heat, driving really aggressively, or just old transmission fluid that's broken down and can't protect the parts anymore. As soon as one ring breaks, the belt loses its tension. It can't keep those elements in a straight line, and it starts to slip against the pulleys. And that is when you start feeling the shudders, hearing the noises, and losing power.
Okay, so that's the scary part. The good news, the really good news, catastrophic failure is almost always preventable. So let's talk about how you can protect your transmission and your wallet. So how do you keep your CVT happy and healthy? It really just comes down to 4 key things. Number 1, and this is the big one, change your transmission fluid regularly. It is the lifeblood. It lubricates, it cools, and it stops that breakdown we just talked about. And please make sure it is the exact fluid your car calls for. Second, just drive smoothly. Flooring it from every stoplight puts a ton of strain and heat on that belt. Third, don't do any heavy towing. Most CVTs just aren't built for that kind of load. And finally, and this is common sense, if you notice any of those symptoms we talked about, get it checked out right away. Don't wait. When it all boils down, you're really facing a simple choice. And the financial difference between these two paths you can take, it's just staggering. Look, on one path, you've got preventative maintenance. We're talking about the cost of a few fluid changes, driving smart, maybe a minor repair here and there over the life of your car. But on the other path, you've got catastrophic failure. Now we're talking about a complete transmission replacement, a bill that will run you thousands of dollars, not to mention a car that could be a real safety hazard on the road. The choice, well, it really is that stark. So next time you get behind the wheel, just pay attention. Listen for those whispers. Feel for any shudders. Because what you learned today could literally save you thousands of dollars tomorrow. So the real question you should be asking yourself is this: is your car trying to tell you something?